Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and namaste everyone. My name is Rakshit Vaishnavi Dogra, and I invite Ecaterina Moraru, who goes by @Ivalika on Twitter, who will be giving us a splendid talk on UI UX tips and tricks for developers. I already follow the tricks and tips she gave us in FOSDEM 20. So, ladies and gentlemen, I request a huge round of applause for her. All the best, ma'am.
Oh my God, thank you so much for this introduction. I feel like, yeah, the audience is so happy. Yeah, hello everyone, nice to be here. My name is Ecaterina Moraru, and I want to talk a bit about UI tips and tricks. I said that they are for developers, but I mean, they are for everyone. I mean, developers are just humans, right? But why do I think it's important to know at least the base things regarding the UI UX is because we have this I don't know, this approval inside our open source communities that the interfaces are not good enough and not enough designers are available to help with the project we're working on. So I think it would be very helpful for any developer to know some basic when they're doing their interfaces. Personally, I work as an user experience designer, and I've contributed in open source for the past 12 years, and I would love to have more designers involved, I don't know, in making open source so much greater than it already is. If you have questions, please ask them when you have them. I mean, I tend to talk very fast, so yeah, if you have questions, just address them now. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so just like in programming, let me switch the slide. Just like in programming, we also have some patterns in the user experience field. The patterns can be, I don't know, it depends very much on the platform. I mean, there are some patterns for web and for mobile, but the patterns are considered to be, let's say, the next level. In this presentation, I'm going to go even lower and even basic, just like learning CSS or learning the algorithmic part of in programming. And we're going to cover some of the principles. And principles are just fundamental rules about the practice of design. And there are many principles. I'm kind of mixing principle and examples in my presentation, but the biggest principle that everybody should try to apply in the interfaces they are creating is consistency. And I don't know, as a beginner, you should make that your main rule, that everything needs to be consistent. If you go to the advanced level, let's say, there are some corner cases where consistency can be broken, but in majority of cases, if you stick to the consistency rule, then you'll be on the safe side for the majority of things that you're doing. And what exactly it means to be consistent, it means that similar objects should have similar meaning and function. If something behaves in a certain way, user learns that once, and then he will know that that thing or object will behave the same next time. When consistency is broken, we have that confusion moments, and the users are not sure what exactly happened. And also, it would be very nice, I mean, to take the same principle or things that we see in the surrounding world and apply them in our interface. I mean, if we see that everywhere on the applications, when you click on the logo, it takes you to the home page, you should do that also in our applications. I mean, having a consistency inside an application is great, but having consistency across multiple websites and software is even better, because the user don't need to read any of the manual. Okay, and consistency as a principle, can be applied to anything, starting from buttons and continuing to all kinds of UI elements. And even if the buttons need to be consistent, there are several types of consistency we can apply. I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to be consistent on one type. I mean, there can be consistency in subtypes, and buttons can be split and should be split. I mean, if you split them, it's going to increase the usability. You can split the buttons in the two categories, like primary and secondary actions. I mean, when you have a page or a screen in your application, you should present to the user what is the main action, what is the call to action that you want that user to follow and to do on that particular screen. And there are several ways to do that, like, I don't know, like floating buttons, like, you know, the pluses that we see on the corner of our screen, or I don't know. But no matter how you decide to represent this, they should be marked with a more predominant color in order to attract the attention of the user. And everything else, all the other actions you have, present them as secondary actions. Sometimes there can be like tertiary, like, you know, like cancel, or like other things that you know for sure the user might not need, but have at least one primary action and represent it in a very clear way. And when you represent this action, make sure that you are using verbs as action. We've seen a lot buttons that have like okay, or read more, or I don't know, even next can be ambiguous, but it would be so much easier for the user to know exactly what it will happen if you press that button. So using verbs helps the user do that, because users think in verb. When they are on the screen, they might want to add something or delete or edit, and not second guessing what that button does, or not needing to read the description text every time he does that will help them make that decision faster. Also, when we are writing hints or labels that help describe the action, make sure you are using natural language and not very technical terms. I mean, in open source, it's so often that you see concepts that are not explained to the user, and a lot of abbreviation and things that for the normal users, they not necessarily know what they mean, and that's why the interfaces can be perceived as scary. Regarding consistency, it would be ideal if you would also preserve the tone of the way you are phrasing the things, like being friendly and keeping the same tone everywhere. And I know this is very hard, because as developers, we are preferring so much to be efficient, and we know that just with one acronym we are saying so much more, but it's very important to know what is your target audience, and try to be empathic and put yourself in the other shoes, and think of the users that don't know anything about your interface. Okay, so I hope I won't see buttons anymore with okay or stuff like that. Button placement can also possess some issues and questions, especially for people that are not very comfortable designing interfaces. Sometimes we look for inspiration in some screens, and we see that I don't know, in some screens we see them on the right side or on the left side. If you are designing for devices, the manufacturers of the devices I mean, the operating system people are usually providing also guidelines and style guides on where exactly the button is to be placed. And unfortunately, some platforms prefer it one way and others prefer it the other way. But again, as long as it's consistent everywhere on that platform, it's great. But when you are trying to make the decision for yourself, maybe you are designing for web, and on the web, we don't have very clear rules or where to place them. What could help you make that decision is understanding the reading flow that the user does. So, for example, in the left align, the user could just read the title and maybe go directly to the button that is the action. So the flow can be very linear. But for example, I don't know, when we have confirmation dialogues, it's very good that we have them, and we should be very explicit of what are the consequences of that dialogue. But this means that the user should read what's stating. I don't know. I'm also deleting this records from the database. Am I affecting something else? Can I go back, etc.? So the pattern the user does, it will read the text, it will read the description, and then it will go to the secondary button, and he could continue, because that's what we want them to do. He could continue on the primary button. On the left aligned side, he will need to make this going back in order to keep to make the action. So yeah, think about if you prefer to have the vertical scanning, or if you need this. But no matter what decision you make, you should make this decision only once and then apply it to all the forms and all the buttons across your interface. A note regarding mobile devices. Let's say, this screen, when it's either left or right, is not very important when the display is very little, because the distance from left to right is like, I don't know, 300, 600 pixels, depending on the resolution. And sometimes you can also see on the mobile devices buttons that are centered or that are full width, and put, I don't know, like vertical one after the other. So on mobile, it doesn't matter that much. But on the web, if we have very large displays, and for example, like here, we don't have columns. I mean, when you have larger display, you can group and split the content into multiple areas, each with their own layout. But let's say if you would have something like this, even let's say if you would have preferred the left alignment because of that faster millisecond, in this case it will not be that efficient, because you kind of lose the context between the text and the buttons. So yeah, you kind of need to know exactly what resolution you're designing, what are the cases, and sometimes it's okay to make some screens or reiterate, because it's not waterfall. I mean, we can see the screens after and go back in the interface and fix them and decide later, even though it's not very efficient from an implementation point of view. But I think it's better if we fix them later and improve the usability than the work needed to do that. Regarding placement, sometimes buttons feel more natural if they are placed on the right side, let's say in the case of wizards, but this depends very much on the culture you are designing for, and again, you need to know your target audience. I mean, in Western culture, we are reading the book from right to left, and we are reading from left to right, so it's natural for us to, I don't know, to make the same movement like the pages on a book. But not every culture reads this way, and I don't even want to go in the, I don't know, Japanese or other Asian reading directions because they can also be vertical. But the point was here that for wizards, it feels natural to have next on the right alignment, but no matter where you place them, another tip that you need to know is that the primary button needs to be placed near the edges. I mean, you should not place the primary action in the middle. Think about the direction you want the user to go and place the most important action near the edge because it will be much easier to be found by your user. Color has meaning. It's very important and it's very interesting to look at. I mean, I'm making a generalization here and it's not true, but I wanted to say that open source projects have a lot of blue, and it is great because blue means, I don't know, trust, and we want with our application, especially because they're kind of technical and kind of advanced, to inspire the user with trust. But keep in mind that colors, again, depending on the culture, have some meaning. And depending on the culture, it's again an important note because danger in Western means, and it's used for errors and I don't know, destructive actions and things that could go bad, while in Asia, red means auspicious and luck and all the good things. So yeah, think about that. And I mean, it would be great to, depending again on your audience, if you want younger audiences, you might want to use black. Oh sure, we love black in open source, right? It looks more geekish, but I don't know, maybe you would want to use purple or oranges. Think about how other people are using, and I know we want to be different and we want to be unique, but sometimes people come with expectations of what they've seen in other places, and I don't know, maybe they expect some green sites and colors to be used by pharma or I don't know. In the branding part can be a lot of discussion. So sticking to the blue, it's actually a good point because I don't know if you can go wrong with that. But what I've talked until now is mostly of having like an accent color and a branding color that you can apply to the majority of your style guide. But in theory, you could have multiple colors for buttons. I mean, you can have like a success and warning and info. And if you were to use, I don't know, UI framework like Bootstrap or a library that provides the code already done, they usually provide this kind of specialty buttons. This doesn't mean if they are there that we should use them, and in generally we should try to limit the color selection we are making. And another note about the color that I want to make, I mean, in this case it's very nice because it's a success and warning, but imagine that you would have like a word that it's ambiguous. You don't know exactly if it's a success or if it's danger, and you as a designer rely on the color, and that person that is viewing this screen might be colorblind or not necessarily identify the color and or understand exactly the meaning that you're trying to convey. Don't rely only on color. That's why a good practice is to I don't know, put like an icon or try to make another shading or some background thing that can add to the diversification of the icon a bit more for the people that that don't necessarily differentiate colors. And this is more related to accessibility, but it's good to have it as a mention. And why should we have destructive colors and actions? again, this might break a bit the consistency, the thing that we were talking in the first thing, but this can be a good thing if we are using it with caution. I mean, if we are consistent throughout the interface and users know that that button is to be blue and they see that button to be red, they might say, okay, this is something special. Maybe I need to pay careful attention to it. And again, don't rely just on putting that color and making sure that users will know the consequence of their action. Always try to have a confirmation for destructive action, explain very well what they are doing in case the user is not able to recover things that they are deleting. You know, there are several patterns here, like even very not hardcore, I can say, but you know, when you were requesting the user to type the name of the folder they want to delete, or to really type delete, I mean, these are not necessarily good practices, but there are some ways to ensure that the users know what they're doing. I would not encourage these kinds of things because they kind of increase the time to make that action. Yes, sure, the user will be very aware that he is doing something bad, but he also be very scared about ever touching that piece of functionality there. Ideally, we should provide support for undo, and it's so funny when as a designer you go to the developers and ask them for undo, and I mean the requirements to have this kind of functionality are so much difficult from an implementation point of view, but are so much nicer on the user side. And you always need to make this balance of deciding what side you want to make happier. Okay, and yeah, I mean, use them as blue because they should be consistent, but it's better if you put them as red. Affordance, it's a principle that is widely used and widely found, and it's so much nicer when it's well implemented. And the metaphor for understanding affordance, it's the doors. So if you want to open a door and it has like a circular handle, you might know that in order to open that door, you need to twist the handle. The same is when you see the door and it has like this handle, like vertical, and you can grab it, you might understand that you need to pull it, or if it's like flat, you know that you need to push it. The problem is when the affordance the door is giving you doesn't match with the behavior that door has, and that's why when you bang your head to the door and stuff like that. So affordance means giving cues on how the user should interact with the interface before they even pressed it. And it can be very good if the interface behaves as the user expects, and it can be not very bad, but it can be confusing and annoying and disturbing to the user if the interface does not behave like the user expects. And I provided here some examples. So for example, let's say that you have some headers and you put them in blue, but those are not actually links. I mean, if we were to go on a blog platform, the majority of them are links, and you expect to go there and I don't know, read the whole article or something. But if you make them blue and it doesn't do anything, you'll be like, okay, it doesn't do anything, you'll learn, and then you make again the mistake. So it will, every time you will have this I don't know, battle inside you of what does it want from me. Another thing, the same is also for I mean, to differentiate links from the content. The user might not know that this is a link. It might say, I mean, in this case, it's very nice because it says details and the others you cannot read. But if it were to be a whole text and having only details at the end, you might not know that that's a link. So for the past, I don't know how many years, these blue things and blue links and underline links, it has been so much blurred because we have like now style guides of every other color, but some users still expect, and if we were consistent throughout the interface, if you will see some text that is blue and underlined, I'm assuming that that person will know that that's a link and will expect it to be a link. So differentiate the links from the content, and if you can make them blue and underlined, that would be a plus for the usability of your application. And one of the questions is, okay, when to use buttons and when to use links. And let's say maybe it's more obvious to not have buttons inside of the text, and not necessarily it would, I mean, it will also look strange, but you will also have some line height alignments, and things will not look good or align good. But the thing you need to know here is that buttons and links have been created for a very specific purpose, and that meaning that buttons should be used for actions and things that affect the interface. I mean, I don't know, that add entry to the database, that changes the state of an object, while links were created mostly for navigating through next screens or to go other places. So use this thing as a rule when trying to decide what to use when. I mean, sometimes we prefer the look of the links. We think maybe it's a bit more light, but if you have everything as a link and they have different behaviors, this can also be a bit confusing. Another note that I want to make about buttons and affordance is that traditionally buttons have been displayed as 3D objects, so the flat trend kind of removed all the gradients and all the shadows, etc. But if you have some shadow on a thing, the user might know that it's a 3D. It can be clicked because buttons have very specific states of being pressed or being active or being disabled. So this kind of things could help the user know what to do exactly in the interface. Okay. Wait. I also want to present you some proximity, some other principle, and one of the principles is proximity, which states that objects that are closer together are perceived to be related. And this is very important, let's say, when you're creating an interface and you want to do some grouping. I don't know, you want to group all the menus together and you put them a bit separate, so the user knows those are related and the content is put someplace else. Or in the case that you have a menu and let's say that that menu has like 5 independent things. If some of these things are related, I don't know, like in this example from Gmail a while back, if you have this, if that mail is important or not, you could put them more closely together to state that functionality is like comes in pairs. And it's so much easier to scan an interface where the things are grouped, because you can just jump from one group to another instead of trying to go over each of them. So spacing can be used to provide this kind of grouping. And another thing to consider is the similarity principle, which states that object sharing attributes are related. So if, for example, you would try to read this by lines, let's imagine this were text or something, it will be so much harder than reading them by colors, because our brains automatically groups them by colors, by columns. And this grouping can be done using color or size or shape or orientation, or there are multiple ways in which we can do this grouping in order to help us navigate and browse. You know, when we have activity streams and we have the avatars, some avatars are displayed with circulars and we put them in the front, so the user just jumps from one avatar to another without needing to read, because he's expecting all the items there to be of the same kind. The law of unity is another principle that is kind of overriding cues from proximity and similarity, so it's much stronger in the effect it can have. And what it does is that if you provide lines, like in this case, or if you provide boxes, or I don't know, background colors or whatever, this additional container, it's grouping the things inside of it. So this can be very powerful. I mean, again, even if you would have like so many entries here, just by putting a background and a background color, it will group your form, and the user will know where to look, and that those things are grouped. A note regarding this is that we need to be very careful in order to not overcrowd the interface. The more lines you put, the more background colors you put, the more containers you add, might feel a bit heavy. That's why, in order to have that eerie and simple and clean look, designers are trying to add as much white space as they can, and try to limit at all these heavy things. But if used properly, it can be a very powerful technique in order to emphasize things. Choice paralysis states that if users are going to have lots of options, they will not know exactly which one to pick, and they will be paralyzed. I mean, is that good for me? Is not good for what should I pick? And Hick's law states that the time to make that decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. So what is recommended here is to limit the options we are giving to our users. And I've seen a lot of download pages for our open source project that I mean, we are very proud that we are supporting so many devices and so many platforms, and we want to let the user know about that, but that can be very overwhelming. I mean, we can, I don't know, try to detect the operating system the user is on, and propose exactly what they need. And I don't know, even sometimes even for the same operating system, you have like different packaging methods. So state very clearly what are the differences between the types, and always recommend the one that you are proposing, because sometimes we have a preference what we want our user to try, and sometimes it's the servers. I don't know, depends on the project. So it's hard to make a generalization. A similar principle is the 7+2 rule, which was an experiment done by Miller like 100 years ago, and this psychologist investigated how many words can somebody put in their short-term memory and not forget. And the results then were like 7 ± 2 items, And this argument was used for a very long time in order to limit the things in menus. I mean, if you had like more than 7 plus minus 2 things, it was outrageous and you needed to limit. Now, new research has been made and the estimate dropped to 4 plus minus 1, but there's not really a number that can be given because it depends so much on so many other factors. The conclusion here is that in our interfaces, we should recommend and provide as fewer options or try to group them or present them in other screens in order for the interface to look digestible. Yeah, I've seen so many sites, and sometimes we in open source we take pride in being very thorough and having all the information needed, but sometimes that can look so hard and so hard to digest. Okay, third position effect states that we remember best the first and the last item in the series. The example here is with the alphabet. We know it starts with A and ends with Z, but maybe in the middle some things get confusing for some people. And this can be also combined with the chunking principle that say that if you have a lot of information, it would be good to break it in smaller chunks. And in this case, instead of having a navigation that has like 9 items, just break them in smaller things. And for each of this group, you will have a first and the last, and the first and last will be so much visible than what's inside. Because sometimes we say, okay, maybe the most important thing, put them on the first position and second position, and that is great for things that are in a single line. But we can use this too if I don't know, we have multiple things than 2 that we want to highlight. For fields have a lot of things that can be given as tips of what to do. Chunking can also be applied to phone numbers because it's so much easier to remember things in chunks of 2 or 3s, and you can also size fields accordingly. If that field is just 3 characters or you know the size of the zip code, just provide the exact dimension that you want the user to enter that information inside. Highlighting and explaining the error in the context that it occurs, it's so much better than having a generic place where you can look for the error messages, or how we've done it for our project. The user needed to look in the console to find out the error that happened on the server. No, it would be so much greater for them to have the error inside the interface. Numbers should be right aligned because it's so much easier to compare them by decimals and by hundreds than just having a random alignment for them. And this happens also, I don't know, you can mark things that are secondary information with another color and keep the alignment good so that people can compare the things that they are interested in. I'm trying to go a bit faster because I don't know how much time we still have. And we are closing, and I would want to see some questions. I see we have 2 questions. But as a closing note, I want to say again, I want to say some things about the icons. We are past the interface that are only text-based, and icons are very strong because users learn them once, and then they can apply that knowledge in subsequential usages and just navigate to that. Sometimes it's very hard to find the right icon, or even if you think you find the right icon, that icon can mean so many things. In this case, this can be a search, this can be a zoom, or it can be just a ping pong paddle. So again, know your target and always test the interface that you're doing. But having icons is something that will make your interface much easier to organize and digest after, not necessarily for beginner user, but for advanced user. They will know where to jump. These are just a few of the principles, and I don't know if you're passionate or not about this kind of things, but the UX field has, like, I don't know, like from psychological tips and tricks to things that come from visual arts, and it's such a diverse field, and that with very little information you can bring so much benefit for the end user. So yeah. I will want to ask to see some questions.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We definitely have some questions, but ma'am, unfortunately, we are out of time. So
Okay.
you can address these questions in the chat box. And thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm sure this. Yes, ma'am.
And you can send the questions at my Twitter handle. And thank you so much for inviting me. And have a great day. Thank you.